With YouTube attacking alternative media, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon for just $1 per month. Link below. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and this is my review, my what I think of the Cloverfield Paradox, a movie that literally came out of nowhere yesterday. I was expecting there to be a God Particle trailer at the Super Bowl, but not the announcement of the Cloverfield Paradox, which is its official title, and then the announcement that Netflix was dropping it that night after the game on the service. And I was at Costco, like, calling my girlfriend, like, oh my God, 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 I gotta go home tonight and watch freaking Cloverfield. Because as I've talked about before, I happen to be a big fan of the franchise, and it's one that I've been waiting for. So after I got all my work done last night, after I got my daughter put to bed and everything else, I finally got to sit down and watch the film. And I, honest to God, have more questions than I do answers at this point in time, because they kind of said in the trailer that we're going to get the origin of the Cloverfield monster, which we kind of did. By the way, I should also point out that there are spoilers here, but that was also in the tag, so just so you guys know. But the movie itself, I actually really liked the movie itself. The concept was cool. In the future, we're running out of power. We're running out of gas. That's actually where the film opens up, is Ava Hamilton, the scientist that is the lead character of the film. Her and her husband are waiting in line at a Kelvin gas station, which I love that, by the way. Kelvin is also the gas station that was from the opening of Super 8, which does tie in, I believe, to Alias. It's another one of the JJ things. It ties into the larger universe, which I thought was great as in terms of that being a reference. And they're talking about, like, you know, power outages and power shortages, so on and so forth, and that she needs to go be on a mission. Now, this mission is going up to the Cloverfield Station, which was originally, when the film got the first description, was listed as like the International Space Station, but they renamed it the Cloverfield Station for the movie. I mean, obviously. And that, of course, is what sends her up there, is to try to get the Large Hadron Collider to work in order to essentially create unlimited energy for our planet. And they've been up there for 2 years working on it. The world itself is getting worse, you know, and people are starting to question whether or not this experiment will actually work. But one of the interesting things is when they're watching the news and there's a conspiracy theorist named Mark Stambler, played by Donald Logue, which I thought was an interesting cameo appearance from Donald Logue. You know, I feel, again, that's tying into something we're going to see later on. But he has a book about the paradox. His Instagram account is called paradox_is_real, and he's talking about this could not be good. There's some ramifications that could happen here. It could mix dimensions. It could open up portals. It could bring in, you know, monsters and I think he said monsters and creatures from the sea and everything else, right? So, I mean, clearly talking about Cloverfield, or Clovey, or Clover, whatever you want to call her, from the first movie. And so I'm sitting there going like, oh, that's gonna be it, right? Well, they end up going and setting off the firing off the collider, and it works, but it overloads the circuits and ultimately sends them into a new dimension. That transports them to the other side of the sun. But in another dimension. This is where they meet Elizabeth Debicki. They find her trapped in a wall, like, you know, literally having, like, you know, electrical wires through her because she morphed into their ship. And then weird things start happening across the board, just in terms of, I guess you could say, reality kind of messing with itself, the different dimensions colliding. And it becomes very odd because it doesn't ever feel like there's ever a rhyme or reason why these things are happening. Like, it's kind of explained, it's kind of there, but at the same time you're like, oh, is it just kind of, it feels like it's a bit like an Aliens meets like Event Horizon, but on a space station, and it gets you, you know, it mixes genres. I would say probably like 80% of the time relatively effectively. But if you stop to kind of question the logic or the rules of the universe at this point, you really kind of take yourself out of it. And that's even something that's brought up when Chris O'Dowd's character Mundy gets his arms sucked into the wall and it starts moving him through solid objects, right? When they pull his arm out, or they pull him free, his arm is gone, completely cut off. Like, you see the bone and the tendon and everything, like he was born like that. And then the arm ends up being back, and now it's become its own sentient being, and it gives them a clue for how to fix things. It writes down to cut open the body of one of the engineers, a Russian, who had died from, I guess, worms, because he had worms in his body. It was kind of a weird thing. Stuff was kind of entering him at a weird rate. I mean, it kind of felt like how the Fantastic Four got their powers, but instead of giving them powers, it just really messed with that one Russian guy. And as a result of that, Chris O'Dowd says, well, I don't even understand the rules here anymore. And that, I think, is very indicative of where the audience is at that point. Now, the movie is them trying to, get themselves back home, get the power to work, save the day, save the universe. And there was a bit of a quandary there in terms of Ava's character development, where she had accidentally killed her two kids earlier on, a couple of years earlier, and that was one of the reasons why she went to the space station. So in Mina's reality, Elizabeth Debicki, Hamilton is on the ground. She's part of their operations group on the ground on Earth, and her kids are alive. And that was kind of Ava's motivation to stay, was, I need to go see my kids. I need to try to save my kids. And that was her entire focus towards the last half of the movie, which I thought was good. I thought that was a good motivation for her character. But Elizabeth Debicki wanted to keep their Cloverfield station in her dimension, because when they kicked off the collider, it ultimately destroyed her ship, killing her friends and her crew, leaving her the last one alive. So her motivations kind of became, you could say, selfish at that point, which does make sense when you start to think about it. But at the same time, the story juxtaposes with Ava's husband, who's now on Earth, and stuff is going off on Earth. Like, it's blowing up. It's going crazy. And this is where Cloverfield essentially is at. The monster is now back on Earth, ravaging a city. So my question while I was watching this was, is this the same Cloverfield like that was from the first movie? Does this not take place in 2028, but really 2008, but a kind of an alternate 2008 where they had higher technology or more advanced technology than we had now? No, it's not. It's not. It's I'm assuming 2028, although I didn't quite see. I need to go back and watch it again and look for some of the finer details pointing out the date, because that's kind of where things are at. So you've got that whole situation where he's trying to protect a girl named Molly that he finds. Her uncle is dead. He's trying to reach out to her parents. Again, it's kind of a side story that, like, ultimately, I don't really feel like has much of a point. I was actually kind of waiting for, like, Molly to be nicknamed Mina, and actually, like, that's where in their dimension, like, Mina actually knew them, but it's like a weird kind of time paradox thing. I feel like that would be because Mina was like, her and Ava were friends, were really good friends. So I was kind of wondering if that was going to be a weird paradox. But it wasn't. I was just kind of thinking outside the box on that one. And ultimately, like, the climax is like the whole thing goes to crap. You got to relaunch it in order to get them back to Earth. Mina doesn't like that. She kills the doctor. She tries to kill Schmidt, played by Daniel Brühl. And then ultimately her and Ava get into a fight, and then Ava gets the gun. By the way, I do want to point out they had a 3D printed gun. And the 3D printed gun is the exact same design as the one 3D printed gun that you can get the schematics for right now. It's an upgraded model of it, but it's the exact same design, which I felt was a very cool, I think it's like the Destroyer is the name of the 3D printed gun. But what I loved about that was that they took that little detail, and that's what they put into the film. That little detail alone really had me laughing. And so they 3D printed the gun. She ends up shooting one of the windows with it, sucking Elizabeth Debicki or Mina into the window, which then, basically at the, like, kind of like the end of Alien Resurrection, sucks it out through the window into space, and then they go and seal the airlock off, and she, pulls the bullets out of Schmidt and gets them ready to go as they both fire off the collider at the same time and send them back to Earth, and then fire it off again to solidify the power source, and then they descend to Earth. Now, this again is where I thought we were going to tie into the end of the first Cloverfield movie, because if you remember at the end of Cloverfield, it shows the footage from them, or the footage of them in Coney Island, and you see something crash, like a satellite or an escape pod from a shuttle, right? Like crashing into the Atlantic. And we know that it was crashing into the Atlantic. So we don't quite know to what capacity, you know, if it's going to be connected at all. Turns out none of it's connected. None of it's connected, but as they pass through the cloud cover, clearly coming into the upper atmosphere, or they come into the clouds over the eastern seaboard, Cloverfield comes out of the clouds, showing this is a much larger, like a fully grown Clovey. Because in Cloverfield, the monster was a baby just having woken up. This is a fully fledged monster, so it came from somewhere. We just don't know where. So this movie, they said it was going to like explain the origins. It was going to explain how it got to Earth. But is it trying to say that in 2008's Cloverfield that it came from an alternate dimension? That it wasn't born of the sea. It wasn't something that Tagarotto was drilling into, because Tagarotto has like no mention in this whatsoever, unless there's a subtle reference I haven't seen yet. I'm waiting for the fine folks over at our Cloververse to do their digging on it, to take a look at it. But there wasn't really a lot of references outside of Slusho, which had a little shot in it as a little like kind of bobblehead sort of thing, which was pretty cool. And the Kelvin thing, but Kelvin ties into the larger JJ verse sort of storytelling. And I mean, again, like you know, like 10 Cloverfield Lane obviously was another movie that they added in a couple bits, as well as the ending, in order to tie it into the larger kind of Twilight Zone narrative that they're going for with this. But at the same time, Cloverfield Paradox, it wasn't as connected at all outside of the monster. Now, I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, like, I wish there was more. It's so cool seeing Clovey alive again, because I want to see what's going to happen with that. But we, as watchers, don't know anything more coming out of this movie, except maybe it was brought in through an alternate dimension. One of the things, we know that there's going to be like what they call Overlord or Cloverfield 4 coming out later on this year, and I'm sure that's going to be released via Netflix, very similar to this one. Many people out there have said, oh, this was dumped on Netflix because Paramount knew they had a dud and they just wanted to get rid of it. And I disagree with that. I do feel there is a larger game at play here. The Cloverfield Paradox may not be the best movie in the world, but it has a very strong and solid first half. Bear McCreary's score throughout the movie is wonderful. He did a fantastic job. The score alone is worth a watch. I really do, and I mean that. And I want to see more from these characters, and I'm wondering if they're going to ever tie into anything larger, if they're ever going to tie into anything greater, or if it's simply just going to be another one-off film giving us a little bit of a larger story. That's all kind of held within the Easter eggs and the ARG that have come out. Because keep in mind, just a few weeks ago, we had the first bits of the ARG come out, and no one was expecting it to drop just a couple weeks later. So it's again, there's something more happening here. What I'm waiting for is the details of the Paramount deal with Netflix to come out. I'm waiting to find out more of what's going to happen. And I do feel that the sudden drop of the movie is one of the things that's going to prompt a lot of people to watch it and a lot of people to talk about it, because I already have been. But at the same time, I do recommend you check it out if you like a solid sci-fi film. It does pull from other films like Sunshine, Event Horizon, like I said, Fantastic Four kind of even, but it just in the how they got their powers or whatever. But I would recommend it. I do think that it was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. I do plan on watching it again. I want to watch all three of them kind of back to back to see if I pick up on any little detail here or there. And I'm just glad that it exists. And I'm glad that after 10 years, we're getting more. And I'm glad that it doesn't feel like it's slowing down necessarily, because these things are popular enough to keep going. And so to Netflix, I say thank you. To Paramount, I say thank you. To J.J. Abrams, I say thank you. To the cast of the movie, you guys did a great job. You had solid B and C list actors that did a fantastic job in the movie. Zhang Ziyi, I mean, come on, what's she been in a while, right? Last thing I saw her in was like Rush Hour 2, you know? So it's good to see that this movie was able to get some talent behind it, and it definitely looked like a big budget movie that we got on Netflix. And so just another reason why Netflix is owning the game left and right, man. It's just, they're kicking serious ass. But anyway, I turn it off to you. What do you guys think? Did you like it? Did you hate it? If you, whatever it was, let me know in the comments. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.